Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. Today we are joined by someone who's more than just across the pond from me, but from a land down under, Mr. Tim Thomas. Welcome to the show, Tim. How are you?
Great to be here, CK. Really looking forward to the next hour of conversing with you.
Yes, as am I. So I'm glad that we were able to work out the scheduling to get this to happen. And where you are, it's currently 7 a.m. in the morning, so quite early. And we established that it's 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in Canada. So, Tim, let's dive in. So, you were an ex-Special Forces individual, and this was in Australia. Tell us what that is. What does being Special Forces really entail?
Okay, so basically, Special Forces, if I was being negative, it's just a way of getting twice the work, not much more pay, and getting told you're special, right?
Okay.
Basically we can do things that other troops can do in geographic locations that other people can't, for time durations that the other units can't. So we can function, outside the wire, outside, in enemy territory for much longer, and have a lot more mobility. And what that looks like in real life is that if you look at, say, a map of an area, the amount of geographic location that we can influence and impact is a lot greater than regular troops. We have mobility, we have resources, we have training. And I might say that if you were to compare, say, Special Forces and a regular infantry battalion, the top guys could probably shoot the same, run the same, have the same soldiering skills, have the same similar fitness at the top end, but it's the bottom end that it makes a real difference. So a regular battalion, their lowest common denominator would be a whole lot lower than the lowest common denominator in the Special Forces unit. So it's not that Special Forces is so much better, it's just that our lowest common denominator is so much higher.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. So you're like, how I'm sort of receiving that, I guess, is that when you talk about lowest denominator or common denominator, it could be skill set or speed, agility, stamina, that sort of thing. But one doesn't wake up one day and say, I'm going to be in Special Forces and go sign a paper and start, right? That's not.
Well, it's funny you should mention that, CK, because before you can even apply for the Special Forces, you have to spend 2 years in a regular infantry battalion. And that's pretty hard yards, right? But the only thing really unique about my service was in 2004, the Australian government started the very first time ever in Australia's military history of a scheme called DRSF, Direct Recruiting into Special Forces. So a civilian could theoretically wake up one day and go, hey, I want to join the Special Forces, but obviously there's a great screening process. So when this thing kicked off, I was told there was between 5,000 and 10,000 people apply, and they've got to go through the psychological testing, the aptitude testing, the IQ testing, the physical testing. There's a bunch of physical standards you've got to be able to pass, to even apply. But if you can get past them, you can do a direct entry. So if you pass all your basics, you'll get screened with some of the advanced, and then you get a chance to do what's called Special Forces selection. And that's for commandos, 28 days of just some very hard yards. And so that was my on-ramp. I did go from Civvy Street. I was a professional fighter, back in the 90s, but it wasn't exactly professional. So these days you've got mixed martial arts, cage fighting, all that sort of stuff, very mainstream. Back in the 90s, it was semi-legal in Queensland. It was in these sort of underground biker bars, and they could smoke in the pubs back then. So, you're walking in coughing up half a lung. So that's where I came from. So I had the physical, abilities, but what I struggled with, so I don't want to tangent too much, but that was my on-ramp into the Special Forces. And of the 70 guys that started, less than 15 got through, and they said I was too old. They told me at 30 I was too old to apply. That I was the oldest. That was the maximum allowable age. And I'm dyslexic, so I see things in patterns. So I'd never, what I saw, it was obvious to me, that was the first time I'd ever been 30, right? That's the first time I'd been that age. And if, this is the first time, CK, you're this age, and everyone listening, you're at a particular age, that's the first time you've been at that age. And everyone was saying, oh, at this age, you should do this, and what you can't do is this. And I realized that's them saying what I can and can't, what they can and can't do. Shouldn't it be me that decides what I can and can't do at my age group? Because this is my first time of doing it. I'd never done this before. Surprise, surprise. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to allow myself to give this a crack. I very proud achievement. I managed to get to that, to pass the Special Forces selection and get the coveted Sherwood Beret, as they say.
So I have two questions stemming from that because, and I have to write them down because as one of my defects, if you will, or not defects, is that I have a memory like a goldfish. And then, I got it wrote down. Perfect. So without detracting too much from why you're here, I'm very interested in, you said you were a fighter in the semi-legal fight
early
world.
Days of mixed martial arts, yeah.
Yeah, so like early days of like UFC type thing?
Yes.
Okay. How? Like, how did that happen?
Well, okay, that's an interesting story. So at 25, there was something inside my spirit that was terribly imbalanced and hungry, and I wasn't feeding it. And I noticed when my physical body was hungry and I fed it, it was full. But there was something going inside my spirit that was being malnourished. And I thought, well, I've got to focus past my physical to tap into the spiritual, because my physical was getting mixed up with my spiritual. Like when I was craving, because I was out of balance, call it emotionally, spiritually, whatever the unseen part of a human is, whatever you want to call that, that was crying out for some sort of nourishment. And I noticed my physical body would get confused thinking, oh, that's hunger, you've got to eat. And so I would eat and gorge and all these sorts of foods because I was trying to nourish a part of me that food simply couldn't reach.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, look, if I'm going to focus on my spirit, and this is my journey into this, I'm not saying I'm recommending anyone do this. I said, well, I have to transcend the physical. So I fasted. And it was about 10 days before my 25th birthday. So I said, I'm not going to eat for 10 days. And I had this idea that something would reveal itself, through that process. And fasting's very interesting because it lowers your energetic state. And there was a lot of parts of me that were burning up a lot of energy, a lot of negative energy. And I noticed, and it became really obvious when I was in a low physical energy state, that when I started thinking negative thoughts, how much energy they took. And I would, without knowing it, when I thought negative stuff, I would just automatically eat to somehow make up the energy shortfall of my physical body, right? And so I really had to, do the looking at what was working, what wasn't working inside myself in those 10 days. And so I was doing night shift at the local hotel. I was just, like a bellhop there. And I was on the roof, the tallest building in town, looking at the sunrise. And I had this idea, that some golden scroll would fall out of the sky and tell me what I'm supposed to do with my life, right?
If it were only that easy, but yes.
Come on, I deserve that. Maybe I'm a bit entitled, But look, the point I'm trying to make here is nothing fell out of the sky, and I'm there on the roof going, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Come on. And I'm like fully bummed, and I just remember looking at my feet and looking at the traffic below my feet, really far away, and thinking, "Okay, Tim, what do you know at 25? What do you know?" I'm like, well, my earliest memory was probably around 3, so I've got a concept of time of about 22 years, And if I honestly ask myself how long it took from my first memory to now, it felt like a click of the fingers. And so, Tim, you're going to do again, and you're going to be 50, okay? And what sort of conversation, 50 odd, right? What sort of conversation does the 50-year-old version of you want to have with the 25-year-old version of you? Because time machines don't exist. And even if they did, they don't reverse age. You know what I mean? They just, yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, the 50, and I just sort of went to the 50-year-old version of myself. And I felt this voice of my own saying, Tim, it's quite obvious you've proven you can live with people thinking less of you. Okay. You can live with not having a lot of money. I used to eat out of garbage bins. Because I wasn't just broke, I was in debt. I can live with that, and I'm fine with it, right? But, Tim, one thing you can't live with is regret. Picture for a second you getting to 50 years old and having all these regrets of the things you couldn't have done. And that sent a whole shudder and deep shake through my whole body. Like, fuck that. I'm not getting to 50 and having those regrets. That would be so much more painful than anything, right? And so there's a really interesting experiment they did with a mouse. They put a spring on its tail, and they measured how much it pulled to go towards the cheese. And it was like 300 neutrons or something. But then they put a smell of a cat in there too, and the pull like tripled in strength. Okay, so there's one thing to go after something you want, great, but it's really powerful to integrate the shadow. Like, there's something I don't want to have.
So you explained what was happening to the mat, and you visualized the training, but how did that translate to joining early days UFC? So we were talking about, and for anybody at home, we had a disconnection, if you will. So we're just kind of catching up. We were talking about all of the being present, being 100%. And then you were explaining to us, you were sitting on the bench, I guess, looking at the mat, visualizing the training. And then you started competing locally, I think is what you were saying. So that led into the actual fighting.
Well, I did the local competition, started winning them. And again, it was just this big shift when I started spending 10 or 15 minutes before training visualizing what was going to happen. And it's so weird. I wasn't actually doing anything. It was just like drawing a bow back, so when I actually put my body into motion and it was actually connected to my mind, it was a whole new day. And that led me to winning local comps, regional comps, state comps, national comps, Pan Pacifics. And I was probably, and then, these fights came around where they were paid, you could, and they were simply called no rules fighting. And in the change room, when they're reading the rules, they said, look, there's no digit insertion, but anything else goes, and so like the rules these days are quite clear and concise about what's allowed. But back then it was just anything goes. And guys actually figured out that you can't, gouge with your digits, they say, but you can use your chin to gouge someone's eye. So imagine someone grabbing someone else's skull and driving their chin into their eye socket. That's the kind of stuff that happened. So that's sort of where it came from. But I was so immersed in that world, like nothing else mattered except the next fight, that I didn't really plan much of a future. And I was with, a woman that I'd married, and and I had no qualifications to get above minimum wage. And so there was a part of me that always thought about joining, the army. But then this thing came in called I spoke to it earlier, the direct recruiting into special forces. They're kind of looking for ex-athletes that could pass an IQ test to then apply for this. And I seemed to sort of tick those things. And I thought, well, that's one job that I'm qualified for. And at the time, we had what was called the Bali bombings, where they had a terrorist bombing in Bali, a nightclub got blown up, and one of my friends was in that nightclub, and I thought the good thing about Australia is we have such an assumed sense of safety. If we see a box on the side of the road, it's a box on the side of the road. People leave their windows open. We just assume that there's no one walking around with guns. And no rampaging mobs of, armed vigilantes. And I thought, well, if fear is to come into our society, it would take generations to get rid of it. So I'd rather have a fight somewhere else than in my own backyard, classic sort of line. And to be honest, I needed to be able to provide for my family. And I saw, special forces as one way of doing that. Fun fact, in my first week of basic training, I find out that I call her my then wife, not my ex-wife, because I stand for a positive future for her. And so my then wife told me that we were pregnant. And I did the math, and I'm like, that baby is going to be born when I'm on Special Forces selection, And before I did selection, they said, listen, Tim, this is Special Forces selection. You can see your baby being born, or you can do selection. You can't do both. And that was tough, man, because I'd worked as hard as I'd ever worked day and night for about 9 months, a lot of sacrifice. And yet this was my firstborn. And I thought, well, I can't see this from my perspective. I've got to see it from the child's perspective. What does that child need coming into the world? Does he need his dad physically there at his birth, or does he need a dad with a job? And so I got my then wife all the support she needed, and I told the selection board, I'm doing selection. And that was what they were looking for, And they actually let me have a phone so I could stay updated with all the stuff going on. And there was one particularly brutal day where we're doing what's called fire and movement, where you're crawling on all fours, right? For hundreds of meters, and we're crawling through this cactus with like 2-inch barbs. This stuff would go through your leather boot. And at the end of each session, you'd get your bayonet, which was like a large knife, and you'd pull out all the barbs, right? And I get the message then saying, the water's broken, it's all happening. And I remember just looking up at this green tree thinking, this is going to be the worst. I'm going to regret this day for the rest of my life, And at night, we set up a night harbor, and I was laying out the claymores, and this officer pops up out of nowhere saying, and he'd met my then wife, and he says, oh, how's it all going, with your wife? And I said, no, it's good. I got the message. The water's broken. And then he says, oh, do you want to go see her? And that's when I automatically put my left foot forward and have my right hand behind my back. Because what happens on selection is they'll say, oh, do you want a drink of water? And they'll tip it out in front of you. Oh, we're going towards the truck. You get to the truck and the truck takes off. So they offer you something and then they take it away. So here I was, I'm lining this guy's chin up, because if he pushes me on this subject, he's getting knocked out. I'm going to jail tonight. You're not supposed to knock out officers, right? So I'm just going, right, I'm knocking this guy out. But then he goes, no, I'm serious, Tim. Do you want to go see her? And I'm like, still cautious. He goes, no, I'm absolutely serious. I'm in the position to make the phone call now. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. And, the good thing about the Army is when an officer gets on the phone and starts swearing, stuff starts happening really quickly. So a truck came and took all my bombs and bullets. Another vehicle came and took me. And I'm running through the aisles of the hospital, in this stinking, camouflage uniform, cam cream on my face. But I get to see, my firstborn born.
I love that. I love that. So I have a personal question to ask. Have you reached 50?
Do I look like I've reached 50? I'm
You
just
don't,
kidding.
not even close. But that's why I was
No,
like,
I'm a few years past 50. Yeah.
okay. So my
Um,
question for you then, before we take break, is at 25, you were standing on the ledge, and fast forwarding to 50 years old was what catapulted you into pausing, becoming present, visualizing the fight, the training that then led to years of competitions and street fighting, then that led to years of special forces, your then wife and now child. When you reached 50, did you have any regrets?
well, this is the kind of come back after these messages moment, isn't it?
Well, you can answer before, or we can come back if you need a moment.
Let's come back.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody.
Life in Stitches by CK Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody, to Poddin My Noggin. Before the break, we were talking to Tim Thomas, who was detailing his life leading up to, well, now, really, sort of. And he had talked about when he was 25, he was on a 10-day fast. He was trying to figure out what to do. And he was thinking a golden skull was going to fall from the sky, which didn't happen, y'all. So he was on a 10-day fast. He was a bellhop at a hotel, and he was standing at the top of the hotel roof on the ledge, and he was looking down. And he had detailed for us that it was in that moment that he realized the scroll wasn't coming. And he looked down and thought about what would he think at 50. So what he established was from the earliest memory at 3 to 25, it had gone by in a snap. And 25 to 50 could potentially go by in a snap. What would that look like? So he had said he visualized himself as being 50 and looking back. And through that exercise, we established that you changed your entire life, really. But you wanted to know the reason that you were propelled towards looking at that mat, and you'll have to watch the beginning half, but looking at that mat and visualizing that fight was you didn't want to have any regrets at 50. So my question before the break was when you hit 50, did you have any regrets?
Great question. Great lead in. And what stood out to me at 25, yes, there was things I wanted, but what really shifted some really deep stuff was seeing all the things I didn't want. Like, as God is my witness, that will not happen. Okay, so everyone listening, I don't know who you are or what you want, but I'm pretty sure I can know what you don't want. Okay? You don't want, yeah.
This goes back to the mouse.
Yeah.
Which you had said earlier about you put it in front of. So okay, I'm having clicks now. So the mouse was only moderately propelled
Motivated
forward
the
by the cheese, but the putting the cat in the picture,
yeah,
gave three
triple
times the force.
Yeah. So when they talk about integrating shadow, I don't know you, but I can guarantee you a few things that you don't want. Okay? You don't want to lose connection with your body. You don't want to, live a lifestyle that's disconnected from who you want to be. And we can get by day to day, right? But if we project forward, so, if we make choices that get us, like, here's how we want to live, and here's the choices we make that's taking away from it, as time goes on, that becomes really, really obvious. It's not so obvious in the day because we can sort of get by and whatever, right? So you really have to amplify, as I did at 25. I amplified what it would be like if I had all the things I really didn't want to happen happening. And what I didn't want to have happening was, there was, like, I wanted a strong connection with my physical body. I wanted to be to have a thought and be able to go after it. And so that's what, to me, confidence is. Confidence in yourself is knowing that if I'm thinking something, you know what, I can do it. That's what confidence is. It's not like a necessarily a high energetic state. It's in those quiet places where, you know what, I've got a thought, I can actually bring it into reality. So, when I'm working with high school students, I'll do a similar activity. I'll say, okay, think of the how old you are, concept of time. Let's push that forward into the future. Let's think of the best life you could possibly have. Feel it, taste it, touch it, move around in it. What do you see happening? What are the interactions like? All right, bring it back to this moment. Now, think of another future in 10 years' time of the worst possible scenario. Think about you being completely disconnected from your body. You, after 10 years of eating terrible food, you can't move. You've got these preventable diseases. Your skin stinks. You want to get up off the couch and do something, but you can't. Is it possible for you to make choices for you to end up like that? Now sit in that place for a bit. Really go there. Feel what it is. Smell it, taste it, touch it. Now pull back to the moment. Now, moving forward, you've got two sets of energy centers. One, this is what I really want, and this is what I really don't want. Because I can tell you now, CK, when I was on selection and it was 28 days of hell, and my kid, they told me I couldn't go sit, and there was complications after the birth, let me tell you. So I was as stressed as a father could be. Mum almost didn't make it through the night. And then as soon as I get back out to selection, like as soon as like that had done, I was straight out to selection. We started demarcation, which is 3 days, 3 nights, no sleep, no food, and just hard yards, So point I'm trying to make here is some days I was going forward in selection because I wanted to be a commander. I wanted to wear the Sherwood beret. But other days I'm like, fuck the beret. But if I stop this, I'm going to go back to the job that I used to have. And the job that I used to have, I was so blessed to have an absolute a-hole boss. And there's no way I'm going back to that prick. And that was super real power, And so moving forward, I ask people to envision 2 futures. Make it as good as you can. That's good. But make it as bad as you can. Like really ramp it and ask yourself, is it possible to me to make choices to make my life as bad as it could be? And once you grip onto both of those, you can move forward. And so to answer your question, at 50, I was so freaking happy, and I was happy because I pretty much said fuck you to everybody who said I couldn't. Like, you're too old to be a professional fighter at 25. You're too old to be in the special forces at 30. And I discovered that performance is like a pyramid, okay? Top of the pyramid, you're kicking ass, you're chewing bubblegum, you're making bank, you do it, you're hitting your targets, whatever they are, right? But then the bottom of the pyramid is your rest, recovery, and healing art forms. And if you can widen the base of your pyramid, the top stays high. So I noticed that if you do that model, that pyramid model, you're not going to age like other people age, because you're spending the time to widen the base, dialing into your unique, rest, healing, and my favorite thing is breathwork, right? But if you see that, because people have these fears of, something happens at 30, 40, 50, 60. I don't actually celebrate birthdays anymore because it's like this group hypnosis. Oh, at 40, you're supposed to be a certain way. At 50, you're supposed to be a certain way. At 60, that is someone else's bullshit. We have to stay sovereign, and a certain amount of fuck you, this is my life. Okay? And once you get sovereign like that, and it's not fuck off, I don't want you around, but this is where you stop and I start. Boundaries are super important to growth. Um, and and so at 50, and this is it gave me so many possibilities because and this happened literally earlier this year. I wanted to, because my son, he's 20 years old, he's strong, fit, tall, he's a fighter. Um, and he was training for a state competition, and I was going to go train with him. And it's such a blessing for me to be able to throw down with him at 50, right? And kids aren't going to do what you tell them to; they're going to do what you do, you know. So I asked his grandfather, my father, "Do you want to come along and watch?" And he goes, "No, no, I'm tired." I'm like, Dad, your grandson's training. I'll drive you there. No problem. It's not going to be any hassle. And he goes, no, I'm too tired. And you know what? As much as I love my dad, in that moment, I said, fuck you, Dad. That is not good enough. Not good enough, you know? And I was so angry that when I went to training with my son, I explained to him what happened. And I said, Corbin, I'm going to make a promise to you. And the promise is this. In fact, I'm not even going to promise you. I'm going to promise when your son is 20 years old, I'm going to be throwing down with him and just as competitive as I am right now. You know, how that's going to happen, I don't know. But every time I train now, I'm training to be able to compete with a 20-year-old that doesn't even exist yet. My son hasn't had kids yet. He's only 20. In fact, he's in Canada right now. He's in Canada right now on
Wicked.
holiday. Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that.
and first white Christmas. But point I'm trying to make here is my vision forward. Like I've proven to myself that if I say I can do something, I do it. If I think it, I can say it. If I can say it, I can do it. So I've said out loud that I'm going to. So whenever I'm running, whenever I'm lifting, whenever I'm doing something, it's with the focus of my next 25-year plan is to train hard with my grandson.
I love that. I love that, and I agree with you because like so many things, right? And we're going to talk more about what you've done post special forces as well. But so many things that you're talking about it adds up. It makes sense to me because I think we are our mindset. That's the extent of who we are as people is our mindset. And for me, which I'm not going to get into, but I've talked to you about a lot on this podcast already, is that for the first 35 years of my life, my mindset was fucked, right? And then after that, at 35, so I live by pre 35 and post 35. I'm not Jesus though. It's just that's how I do it. So I have seen just throughout every aspect of my life because I know what the worst could be. I know what it could be. So I choose to make the best of it. I'm not perfect. We all make mistakes, but you know what I mean? And I also know I'm still not reaching my fullest potential because there's still work to be done to get to that 100 that you were talking about. So I'm very aware of that. But it tracks. It makes sense to me what you're explaining to me and the audience is that. And I love that technique. I love the idea of imagining the worst that can happen and not really the worst that can happen, what you most don't want and the most you do want, right? And I think that is a really good measure or balance of every particular option or choice you're going to come in through life. Everything that seems hard. Do I do this? Well, if I don't do this, what is the thing that I most wouldn't want to happen from not doing this happening? And what is the thing that I most want to happen from doing this happening? That's a really great metric to sort of live your life by and to help form choices because at least then you know what the worst thing is that you don't want to have happen. If you choose that option, then you're doing it. You're creating that existence for yourself. Love that. So you were in the special forces. While you didn't serve Canada, I will thank you for your service because I think anybody who serves in the line of fire and danger in protection of other people is such an honor. It is an honorable um, type of work. And then, especially knowing what you had to go through from a psychological and physical perspective through the special forces. Because, like, could I do it? Yes, I think I could do it. Do I want to do it? No, I don't think I want to do it because do I want that much? That's not my vision, right? But there would have been a time where I would have said, I don't think I could do that. But I think really any person can do anything they want to do if they choose to do it. Like
And
that's how I.
they allow enough time for them to do it.
Exactly.
Because
Yes.
I get the sense, and you're putting it together so well, CK. I get the sense that people listening to this are really lighting up and going, "Oh wow, there's something for me here," right?
Mm-hmm.
And the best advice I can give you is, I always say start with the body because our energetic signature that no one else can see loves an energized body because it's like your body is like a lock on a safe. You got to turn it one way, turn it the other, and then it lines up, and then you can access who you really are. So the unique energy signature that you are loves it when our body's energized because then we can access the deepest part of us, right? But within that, think about we can do things that are comfortable and easy longer than we can do things that are hard and uncomfortable. So,
Yes.
and I'm speaking to the Western world right now because there's no more forests to clear or mountains to climb per se. Most people go to the gym. And I just want to slide this in here to give people an on ramp to where they want to get to. Think of what you really want to do. Let's say at a gym, let's say you want to go for a walk for an hour. No, cut that in. If you're just starting out, cut it in half and take 20% off. Only walk for, 20 minutes. Because if you can leave that place feeling like, oh, I could have done more, or I feel a bit robbed, the next time you go there, it will have momentum. And so, if I always ask people the question, what's better, 10 workouts at 100% or 1,000 workouts at 60%?
1,060.
Yeah, because that 60% is always growing. And going to the gym, isn't hard. What's hard is organizing everything else in your life so you can actually be there. And if that gym becomes uncomfortable, hard, and icky, before you even get there, you're like, oh, I'm really tense. I don't want to do this, but oh, I'm going to do it, do it, do it. So you're creating a disconnect. You want to be doing your activity so you feel connected deeply to your own body, and you're going to do a physical activity to improve everything in your life and affirm the value you have for yourself. Um, and as much as we talked about, there's things that we don't want driving us forward. You want to sort of have it as a deeper form than I'm only going to the gym because I don't want my ass to look a certain way. So
Mm.
you're doing activities and affirming I love this thing that's carrying my eyeballs around. So every single step, it's getting better. Every single step, everything in my world's getting better. As opposed to I'm only taking these steps because I don't like my ass.
Yes, and I think that's interesting too because I think there was never anytime I wanted to go to the gym because I had to or because there was an aesthetic reason attached to it, I failed. I hated working out. And if you were to say what you're saying to me probably a year ago, I might have like shut down a little bit. But this year, I from January until today, I started working out. When I started on a treadmill saying exactly what you said. I'd like to do 4.5 for 60 minutes straight. Like, so 4.5 miles per hour for 60 minutes straight. But my reasons for wanting to work out were actually because I'm aging. And I look around and I see people who have problems with backs and hips and all of these things. And this is because, and I live a sedentary life because I have an office job and I'm sitting right now. But I didn't want to, I wanted to aid myself. Aging is inevitable. So I wanted to aid myself in the aging process. So keep my hips flexed, or loose rather, my joints moving, all of those particular things. Then what's lovely about that process is some vanity showed up around August because I'm like, what's this? I'm like, do I have pecs? I'm like, I did not think I was even possible that I could have
Yeah,
pecs.
yeah,
But it
yeah,
still remains, I don't work out for the aesthetic. I work out because it's so good for my mental health. One,
yeah.
it aids my aging process. And what you just said about starting out, even when you're in the process, sometimes you're not going to feel like going for an hour, but a half an hour is better
Oh,
than
20
nothing.
minutes. Even just going in there and getting a towel and wiping the dust off the treadmill and then getting back in your car and going home, you're creating a habit of organizing everything in your life so you can be there, you know? And don't think, unfortunately, we're very visual people, right? So it's not so much health and fitness these days, it's health and beauty, all right? So people are getting detached from their real power. So going to a going to a gym because you want to shape is very different to going to the gym because you want a state, an energetic state. So you might get a shape in 1, 2, 5 years' time, but you can attain an energetic state today. All right. So think of energy like money. How you invest it's how you get it back. If you're investing in the right reasons to be there, like I love this thing. I'm going to prove that I love this thing because I'm going to spend time with it doing, something with it. Every single step. Love this, love me. Okay. And you do it to the medicinal level where it might cost you $100 worth of energy, but you get $1,000 back.
Mm.
Okay, and so that's where being super gentle on yourself and just tell yourself. I always have to tell myself, look, in 3 months' time, I can work as hard as I want, bleed from the eyeballs, but right now I'm taking it super super easy. And you'll notice the more gentle you are on yourself, the easier you are on yourself, the less you think about state. Like I feel good about me, and they've shown that simple 20 minutes of movement, you create oxygen and glucose across your blood brain barrier. Your brain sits in this sac, it's called the blood brain barrier, and moving your body for 20 minutes of light cardio pushes oxygen and glucose across that blood brain barrier onto your neural pathways into your brain. And something more than that, it produces something called BDNF, brain derived neurotropic factors, basically fertilizer for your brain. So all those seeds of greatness that are lying dormant in people's heads, or those seeds of uniqueness, they get fertilized when we move our bodies. So
I
I
can
always ask the
attest to
question,
this.
there's a part of me that doesn't want to work out right, but if all I had to do to water those seeds of uniqueness, greatness, and feel good today, would I do it? And that's sort of the big difference, because up until this point, people are fed this very disconnected message of health and beauty, not health and fitness, not connected to your real power. And if you can connect to your real power each day and you become sovereign, imagine, giving yourself everything you really need, being in that energetic state, and then you're impervious to all the crap that people tell you that you need. You can't feel good about yourself unless you're a certain shape. You can't feel good about yourself unless you've got a certain pair of shoes, a car, a house, a home, this. No, man, I'm sovereign. I know what I want. I'm giving it to myself, um, you know, through my process. And, then you negotiate from that position of strength, and you're not sort of at the behest of the consumer society that we're in, because the consumer society doesn't want you to see the value inside yourself. The reason why you don't hear about breath work, my favorite subject, is because no one's making money from it. Okay? And if you're really to tap into your own medicine, your own feel good awesomeness, a lot of that stuff would be redundant. So, I hope the conversation that we're having right now, CK, gets people to see that, you know, your energy is sovereign, and how you invest it's how you get it back. And there's a lot of short-term energy loans out there. Like if I'm feeling flat and I need energy, this world will say, great, I love that you're flat, because I will sell you a coffee, I will sell you an energy drink. And I lost 6 years of my life to pills because I couldn't sleep properly, and I became dependent on all these things. And I didn't know that I could be a sovereign person if I just created the right energetic state, according to my own individual, way of going about it. I hope that makes sense.
It totally does, actually, and it's what's really fascinating for people at home. And I don't know if you're watching my face, I have like all these things firing off as you're talking. Too much to cover in just an hour, but um, the thing that you're here to talk about is, and what we've been talking about is so in line with my truth as a human being and what works for me, right? So post 35, what was the biggest change right away was I started to force myself to go to bed at 10 p.m. and get up at 6 a.m. regardless if I slept or not. And that wasn't easy in the beginning because I had never had a circadian rhythm and was never a good sleeper. I, like you, took myriads of sleeping pills for so much of my life and was able to create that rhythm and that health just by forcing myself to go to bed at a time and get up at a time. And now, 8.5 years later, I still have the same bedtime and rise time. It hasn't changed. It probably annoys my friends because they don't have that same schedule, but they do know that if they go somewhere with me, they don't have to go to bed at 10 and get up at 6. I'll be in bed at 10. I'll be up at 6. So they end up going to bed at the same time. So your thing is also, I think you should patent the phrase "I'm stubborn." Stubborn. I like
Sovereign.
that.
Yeah.
I like that
Yeah.
saying. I like that a lot. So you have been, since Special Forces, you have been developing lots of mental health recovery programs for veterans.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you have mentioned several times during this conversation that breathwork is your favorite thing.
Yep.
And on your profile that I was viewing, and when the whole message was about sleep. So how do they all tie together? How did Fighter, who had no, credentials, if you will, get into special forces to raise a family because they didn't want a life of regrets? How did that happen? How did you find that? How was that?
Sure. Well, I served in the Special Forces 2004 to 2010, had my deployments to Afghanistan and East Timor. I got out, like a lot of veterans get out, they have undiagnosed PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
We tell ourselves as long as we can do our job, we're fine. The family could be falling apart. And a really key indicator that I found of, unhealed trauma or being in a state of some sort of, imbalance is that everyone else just doesn't get it. So if I spent a lot of my day like people are, what, that person doesn't get it. That driving in traffic would always piss me off. So if it just, and this is sort of, if you want to go through the lens of this, anyone listening, if you're going through the day and you're wondering why there's so many people that don't get it, there might be a part of you that needs healing. You know, because generosity is I'm a big fan of generosity. And we can be generous, and it doesn't have to cost us anything. It can be just generous in the understanding of the other person, and because if you're thinking like I was, that person doesn't get it. These people are so stupid. Why is that person doing that? It's like I'm drinking gallons of poison and I'm trying to hurt others,
Okay.
and so getting to that state of generosity, when you generously understand that other person, generously forgive that other person, guess what? That's not necessarily about the other person. That's about you not drinking any more poison. All right. So my journey to being, let's just say I call it a black belt healer, was because I was a black belt in fucking myself up, like a lot of veterans. I was physically quite robust, so I could drink a lot, I could take a lot of pills, and I thought that was normal. I thought I was fine, but I just had to drink half a carton of grog before I spoke to my then wife. I could live with the imbalances during the daytime, but at nighttime they showed up. And I didn't expect to be a healer, but in 2011, I think it was April, I was about to kill a man. The Australian government wasn't paying me. This one I was going to do for free. This one would have been murder. Okay, so I'd reached rock bottom. And what do you do when you reach rock bottom? You're supposed to see some psychologist you've never met before. And so I go on to see this psychologist, and I'm fully triggered going in there. I'm like, I don't want to be here, but this is supposed to help. And so I tell him everything I saw within service and this and this and this. And this guy wasn't just he wasn't just incompetent, he was apathetic. And at the end, he's like, "Oh, you think it was a problem with your mum and dad?" And that's when time froze. You know, that tick, tick, tick of the clock went, and I saw everything in the room, and I saw his glass frame psychology degree behind him. And in my state of disconnect, it made a lot of sense to grab that glass frame and feed it down his throat, because this guy was supposed to be a healer and he was causing pain to others. So removing this guy would do everyone else a favor. And so I get out of my chair to do this. And I feel this hand on my chest saying, "Red light, Tim. You are the toughest mofo you know. How many other guys are struggling in a system that seems to want to keep you sick?" And then I sat back down, CK, and that's when I saw them. I saw thousands of people left and right of me, you know, looking in saying, "Tim, if you can find a way forward for you, you can find a way forward for us." And then I thought, well, it doesn't matter if it takes me a week, a month, a decade. I've got to find a way forward, because if I can do it for me, I can do it for those guys. And I got a pretty strong sense that if it takes me 10 years, that's going to be the amount of time it's going to save all these other people. And these people are real, and possibly I haven't even met them yet. And at some point in the future, they're going to go, "You know what, Tim, we're so glad in 2011 you made certain decisions, because that's really helped us move forward." You know, because I could have easily been in prison. You know, I'd probably still be in prison. So it was at that tipping point where I would class my healing journey began. And I started working in veteran charities here in Australia called Mates for Mates. And being dyslexic, I saw a pattern in pain. I saw two things that enabled me to reach a goal that I had. And I had this goal, CK, of saving 40 veteran lives from suicide, because we'd lost that many Australian troops in Afghanistan to bombs and bullets, but we'd probably lost 30 or 40 times that amount to suicide, you know, outside of that. And it happens in the silence. You don't hear about this stuff, right? But that was a really real thing for me. And I thought, if I work the rest of my life and I can achieve this, I'll die happy. But because I discovered these two things, that goal was achieved within a year. And again, no qualifications, but I just could see I was in the top percentile of pattern recognition with my dyslexia. And what I saw was the pain didn't matter if it was physical pain or emotional pain. It got to a certain duration, or it got to a certain intensity where it transformed without the person even knowing it into loneliness, isolation. I'm the only person going through this. I can't share this with anybody because that would make their life harder. You know, I'd just cause more pain to others. And no one understands what I'm saying anyway, right? So breaking the isolation is the first step in getting in the healing process. Now, my background was, you know, services and veteran, but I'll ask, you know, yourself, CK, and anyone listening, whatever you're up against right now, and we're all up against something. There's something that we want, there's something in the way of it. Ask yourself this question: how many other people do you think are up against what you're currently up against? And that's a real thing. That's not woo-woo. Give that a number. You know?
Oh, I'm sure there's
10,
probably millions.
Yeah, right? So picture those people now left and right of you, looking in, willing you on, saying, if you can do this for us, if you can do this for you, you can do it for us. Okay? So as you move forward, it's not just one hand going forward. There's a million hands going forward. As you're healing yourself, there's a million people healing. Okay? Like, I pick up plastics every day, right? Cigarette butts. And I think it's not just me picking up a cigarette butt. There's a million hands going down and picking up those cigarette butts. And what that does, what I did, so when I was in that office and I was about to kill a man, I was disconnected, feeling alone. And in my aloneness, I can justify all sorts of crazy shit, you know. But then when that loneliness was broken by seeing all those people left and right of me, and they're real, that's when my higher thinking kicked in. When I was alone, it was like a tourniquet, and it kept me in my pain, hurt, regret, and that's all I knew. But when I connected to others, I could think above and actually be sovereign. Because when I'm stuck in my pain, I'm not sovereign, because people are coming in and hurting me, and I'm wanting to hurt others. Mm-hmm. Okay, but when I broke the isolation and I got the bigger picture, and the other thing that I did So breaking the isolation was the first thing. And in my case, so the people listening need to understand, whatever you're up against, you are the person qualified to break the isolation of someone else going through that. Okay, so whatever you need to go through, when you're talking to another person, you might say words that they've heard before, but you're the person with the qualification that can send it from head knowledge to heart knowledge. Okay, only you can do that. My experience of it, and the experience that I'm articulating right now, is the veteran experience. But they're humans, and I want you to pull this closer to you, so you can speak those words, break their isolation. And what's probably going to happen is, if you really break their isolation, you're probably going to hear words like this, and this is what I experienced. The jaw kind of pops open, and they start saying words like, "Fuck, I thought I was the only one." You know? Now, breaking isolation is powerful. Like, us humans, we're meant to be connected. Like, CK, if you knew I had your back 100 fucking percent, and I know you had my back 100%, then, like, everything else is a very small detail. Mm-hmm. When we've got that trust and connection between humans, everything else is a very small detail. You have to be aware, if your goal is healing, you can't just leave it at breaking the isolation. Because what I've noticed veterans and a lot of people with mental health do really well is we start creating these anti-social social groups. So these veterans that can only be themselves around other veterans hang out together, and they might be able to do that for 1 or 2 hours a week, but then the rest of the week they don't have that freedom. So breaking the isolation and then hanging out with people who are in places, who have gone through what you've gone through and are in a position where you want to be. That's the big caveat breaker, because there's plenty of people up against stuff and they're full of information, but they're not actually in a place of sovereignty themselves. Okay. And they love company and they're quite happy to drag you around in that space. So you have to hang with people or be the person that is doing the things that you really want to do, so you can tell someone, and they can love you, hate you, doesn't matter. They can't deny the fact that you've gone through what they've gone through and you're living a life fully aligned with who you are. And that's a very powerful seed to play. So breaking the isolation, first thing, don't get stuck in the antisocial social networks. The other thing that I did that helped me do that 40 within 12 months was understanding that if you've been feeling alone and isolated for so long, it's incredibly fatiguing. You're not sleeping. You can't drop your guard for a second, because if you do, something bad's going to happen, And the problem with that is, I don't know of a mental health disorder that isn't worsened by worsening sleep. And I think sometimes lack of sleep creates a lot of these mental health issues. So I noticed that if I could break a person's isolation, in my case, veterans, and then if I could get them out of fatigue, i.e. improve the quality of their sleep, I noticed everything just improved. I'm like, this is magic. This is working. Keep doing it. Okay. I don't have any qualifications in this, but this is working, and it's amazing what happens when, as mammals, it's like we've got this inner compass, this golden compass with a generator sitting on top underneath it. But loneliness and fatigue covers that in shit. Okay? And once that shit's brushed off, your inner compass knows exactly where to go. And this generator just starts kicking off, and you've got all the energy you need to get to where you need to go to. So, healing and getting out of fatigue, people had everything they needed to then live the life they wanted to live. They just needed the shit wiped off their inner compass and generator. And it was amazing to do. When you really understood what people really wanted, it was amazing how little you needed to get it done. And they spend millions of dollars on veteran rehab, but if you don't break a person's isolation, if you don't get them out of fatigue, it's mostly just water off a duck's back. So I was kind of known for the guy with 20 cents and a toothpick could do more than what millions of dollars misappropriated would do.
That's impressive. So you've been doing this work now for
over a decade.
Over a decade. I am being cognizant of time, and that I just lost my earbuds for some reason. We'll figure out why in a moment. But you had said at the beginning, before we hit record, that breaking isolation So letting people that know that they're not alone, right? That's the key.
Yeah.
Because it does
Yep.
feel very lonely when you are in depression or PTSD for a really long period of time, physical pain, the whole thing. And then improving the person's sleep. So you had mentioned, so right behind you I can see breathe better, sleep better, and then breath work in bed. And you had mentioned breath work being your favorite thing. I think 2 or 3 times throughout this podcast. So in the beginning, before we hit record, you said that you could provide us with 3 breaths. Was it 3 breaths to
3 breaths, full
do
body relaxation.
full body relaxation before bed? So why don't we take the time to do that right now, if you
Sure.
don't mind?
Okay. So this is really simple, and breathing is easy. The only thing that makes breathing hard is because you've been doing it your whole life, and more than likely you've probably been doing it wrong. Okay. So to breathe differently will seem a little funny. Okay. But allow yourself to embrace a new way of doing things. Okay. And create like a muscle and range of movement that you never knew you had before. Okay, so I'm going to do everything I can, all my breathwork mastery powers, to make this as uptakeable as possible.
Okay.
Okay, so all I'm going to get you to do is just now. Anyone listening, you do need to be in a safe place for this. I, if you are driving, just listen to this. Don't do it. Laying down, wherever it is, as long as you're in a safe place, seated is fine. Okay. And CK, just a question: does your seat have arms or no arms?
It does have arms. They're
It does
lower,
have arms. Okay.
but
Okay. It's
yes.
nice. It's a nice stable chair. Okay. So all I'm going to get you to do, CK, and I invite the people at home to do the same, is simply just gently take a breath in. Now breathe in again and again and again and again, and just let that go. Did you notice a little bit of extra space opened up when you started breathing in again and again and again and again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So for the sake of calling it a word, we're going to call that your secondary inhale. So you inhale to this point, and your secondary inhale, you inhale to that next point. So let's try and smooth that out. Let's first breathe in and then try and breathe in again and again. In and then in, and just let it go. Now, I don't know why, but for some reason, when people breathe up in here, it puts a smile on their face. I don't know why. Okay.
Well, I find it really interesting because I took in as much air as I thought I could take in, but then there was still room to take in more. But then there's this weird, not burning, but there's a weird sensation in the chest
Yeah.
at that
You're
point as
breathing into
well.
a space you haven't breathed into in decades.
Okay.
I'm always amazed at how many athletes don't know how to breathe properly. No one's shown them this. It's like we get born with the birthright to breathe, and it's like we're all taught how to limp, and everyone's doing it, so it's normal. Okay, and without knowing it, our breath controls our body. So if you heard someone going, they're about to freak out, right? And so you're shallow chest breathing. So if you're shallow chest breathing, you're sending a signal to your whole body. You're in fight or flight. How is it possible to get above your own lower energies into the higher energies if you're telling yourself you're in fight or flight? How can you unlock your own, reasoning and intelligence if you're in fight or flight? So what I'm going to show right now is a way to juice up this secondary inhale. So yourself and your audience members probably didn't know that in your thumb and 2 fingers you've got a little turbo button. Okay. So this turbo button, you're going to hit that button as hard as you can, push them together like you're pinching something really hard when it comes to the secondary inhale. So you'll start the momentum on your own, you'll hit the turbo buttons and allow that to fill that secondary inhale even more. So give that a try.
So I'm closing and pressing.
When it comes to your secondary inhale, and then just let that go. So start the momentum on your own, and I'll give you a little demonstration. I start breathing in, and then I hit the buttons. And notice how that really boosts that secondary inhale space.
Weird. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let it go. Did you notice when you hit your power buttons, your pinch fingers, that you gave yourself a little boost, or not? Honestly.
1 second. Let me try again.
So try blowing all the way out.
Yes. Weirdly, right here.
Yep. Good.
Weirdly, right there. Okay.
Yep. Okay. Great. So we've just breathed into our secondary inhale. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to juice that up even more because working at a desk, we can be a little hunched over. And so think about this. As I hunch myself forward, I'm pushing my chest cavity into my lungs and I'm not breathing properly. I shallow breathe. So what we're going to do now is as we hit these turbo buttons, we're going to raise our chin and look up, a bit like you're sort of raising your chin, almost sort of doing a bit of a limbo. So it's going to be, so breathing in, raise your chin, raise your chin, raise your chest, and hold it, and then just let it fall out.
What's weird is I think that I instinctually did something similar to that before you showed me on the last one.
Yeah, no, yeah, your eyes, you automatically use your eyes to roll back, and I'm like, oh, that's something there, okay?
Okay.
So let's, again, so because this is new, and a lot of people think, oh, I'm doing it wrong, I've got to do it right. There's no doing it wrong, okay? This is just learning to walk, all right? So let's just do that again, and think of your chin and your turbo buttons like a pyramid, and you're going, and you're pulling that pyramid open, you're stretching that pyramid open, you know? So that's sort of the goal here. So breathe in, chest up, chin back. Now just hold it and wriggle it around. Hold your breath and wriggle your upper shoulders. Wriggle your shoulders, open up that space. Feel how good it is to open up that space. And then just let it out with a sigh.
So I was practicing before, when you were explaining it, before the turbo and the chin. I was just practicing breathing in and then breathing in second. And I was like, ooh, this feels nice. So this is something that you're saying that you should do in bed, at night before bed?
What I'm going to show, just one second. I've got a dog at my door. Hang on. What are you doing? You should see it. I literally have 2 chocolate Labradors at my door right now. They're cute as hell. So what I'm getting back to the breath, we're only halfway through this. Okay. So up here, and I'll just let everybody get conceptual with this. This isn't just your secondary inhale. I call this the breath of possibility. So if I'm kicking around outside in the world and there's something that seems impossible, I'll pinch my fingers and I'll really snort it into that space, okay? Drawing that air as rapidly as I can through my nose, flaring my nostrils, okay? One thing my coach taught me is you snort that through your sinuses, you oxygenate your brain. I don't know how true that is, but I certainly notice a neural pick-me-up when that happens, okay? So I get frustrated when I'm waiting in queues sometimes. So with my hand in my pocket, I'll pinch my finger. So this becomes my circuit breaker. So if there's any shit in my head that I don't want there and things feel impossible, this is my circuit breaker. Breathe into that space. Breath of possibility. And people ask me how often you should breathe. And I say, well, when I took pills, I had pills not just in my medicine cabinet, not just in my regular cupboard, but in my car, in my glove box, in my fruit bowl. I was always self-medicating because I couldn't do it myself. So I use the breath technique I'm going to show you as I'm moving around the place to keep myself sovereign. When I feel myself losing energy or spending it on stuff that it's not giving me a return, okay, to get myself back sovereign into my own skin. All right. And we're gonna take this to the next level. Okay. So you've now opened yourself up, you know, and what we're gonna do now is once we open ourselves up, okay, like so, we're gonna wriggle it around, hold our breath, we're gonna wriggle that air from our upper chest down our middle and into our bellies. And our hands are going to be on our bellies, and it's going to be like a balloon down low. And we hold it there and we let everything relax and squeeze it, and then we let it out with a okay? So we pressurize it and we stop the air coming out with our mouth, and we let it out with a for as long and slow as possible. Okay, so I just invite you to get your power, your turbo buttons ready, and your chin. You're breathing in, opening up, push it down low, put your hands on your belly, let it out really slow. Let your head fall forward, head fall forward like so, collapse forward and just let everything relax. And as you exhale, feel like everything's melting away. Let that air exhaling melt everything in your way in your body. Let's do that 2 more times because, it's sometimes the third time it actually, you figure out how it's going on. So with your turbo buttons ready in your chin, we're going to breathe in, open up the chest, look at the ceiling, hold your breath, wriggle it down, let your head collapse forward, let your shoulders collapse forward, put your hands on your belly, feel that air going down low, down below, low, and then let it out with a for as long as possible. And as you exhale, picture all of your body just relaxing and letting go. And then one last one. It'll feel better on this one. Breathe in, open, wriggle it around, wriggle your shoulders, let it gently fall from your upper chest through your middle chest, let your head fall down, put your hands on your belly, push it down low, give it a bit of pressure, and let it out nice and slow. Letting everything relax, your whole body's relaxing, super relaxed with a super slow exhale.
So, like, the thing is it might look weird to everybody at home, but it feels good. Like it feel like you can feel it in your body. Like I feel it primarily right here when the release. It's weird. It's like a release, I guess. And I mean, it's not surprising to me because I've done mindfulness and breathing prior in my life, right? What's really interesting though is the really weird sensation that I get right here and right here, and then how my body feels like it's melting when I'm releasing. That's peculiar, and it's repetitive. So your recommendation is for 3 times at least.
Well,
each time.
no, that's just a quick little pick me up. I'm giving you a toe in the cosmic ocean. Okay, people wonder why I do 1 to 2 hours of breath work a day. And I just say, if you had something that made you feel amazing, benefits everything in your life, benefits everything in your body, would you do it?
Yeah.
And so, I've created, so everything I do has to pass a P test, all right? 3 Ps. It's got to be powerful, positive, but it has to be permanent. So you and I, we've had a great conversation, okay?
Yes.
But if everyone forgets all the great blahing we just did and just takes away that breathing technique, that'll give them access to permanency. They can use that right now. They can use that tonight. Now, the other thing I've done to make it super easy is if you really want to go on an amazing, peaceful breath cloud to go to sleep on, I've got the Breathwork in Bed app. You could literally pick up your phone, put in 3 words, Breathwork in Bed, and it'll ask you when you want to sleep. And you'll get a notification for when you want to sleep. You hit that, press play, and you get the best night's sleep ever. Very handy if you wake up at 3 a.m., your head's going a million miles an hour, and you want to get back to sleep. Okay? It's pretty lonely at 3 a.m. I know what that's like.
You can check out Tim as well, Tim's website at breathworkinbed.com.au.
Oh, and look, there's thousands of websites out there. Mine's nothing special. The takeaway, if people like this and they want to integrate this, if they want to have like a permanent shift, then having those notifications on your phone through the Breathwork in Bed app, 28-day free period, a few bucks to protect your sleep. I certainly would pay that at 3 a.m. when I couldn't get back to sleep. But the real bonus feature is the wake up function. Most people are used to struggling out of bed and using willpower. That heavy lead, if you spend a few minutes doing the right breath work, you turn that lead into gold. It's like bringing the dead to life, that kind of breath work. If you can start your day on the right sort of compass setting, I'm a firm proponent. If you can win the first 10 minutes of the day, you win the day. And this makes that easy micro habit just fall out of your phone when you need it. And so, we just got approved by Google and Apple, and I've spent over a year doing this. My attempt at permanency is giving people, the Breathwork in Bed app. Tell it when it wants. It'll fall out of your phone when you want, and you'll have those super potent micro habits that people who understand what it is to perform mean that you've got to be really protective of your sleep.
Amazing. So Breathwork in Bed, everyone, available on Android and iOS. Mr. Tim Thomas, thank you very much for being a guest on the show, Poddin My Noggin. It was great. And I wish you the very continued best at 80 when you are throwing it down with your grandson. Right? So, anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in for another episode of Poddin My Noggin. And until next time, go out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@ccsims.com or visit ccsims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.